welcome to a brand new episode of Squeaky Bum Time. Usually I do the introductions. My name's Adam Carruthers. So today, let's spice it up and throw it over to Kish. Introduce our guest, good sir, please.
Absolutely no introduction needed. We've got Phillip Cocu, incredible name in the game, someone who has played at the absolute highest level of everything. And then we've got a goalkeeping icon as well, Mark Schwarzer, who has played what? I think Adam just pointed out the other day to me, and I wasn't aware of this. I apologize, Mark. He pointed out just how highly you're ranked in the all-time appearances list for the Premier League, and that's absolutely astonishing.
I think that's why Adam Carruthers normally does the intros.
Could be. It could be on occasion. But yeah, I mean, there's only 7 players in the Premier League who have more appearances in that competition than you do. It's a tremendous record to have, and we're absolutely honoured to have the both of you sitting here. And the whole reason you're in Malaysia, and I've been saying this a few times, it's rare that we have a player or former player who hasn't actually played in the Premier League in the studios with us, is because of the World Cup.
Yep.
Not very far away, of course. So I want to talk about experiences within the World Cup, some of the things that maybe we don't think about. For example, supposing you go in and you feel you're the undisputed starter in your position and you get dropped. I mean, how do you react? How detrimental can that be to you? I mean, I'm well aware of what happened to you, Mark. You're giving me a glance right now.
No.
No? Let's look up the records. Started the first 2 games of the World Cup tournament, dropped for the 3rd, came back again. Yeah. How do you deal with that? What's it like seeing your replacement make a mistake as you're on the bench?
See, the thing about that was I never ever thought I was undisputed number 1. See, because if you go back a little bit further is when the qualifier, our final qualifier against Uruguay at home, and we're in at the end of extra time, and we're winning 1-0, which is on aggregate 1-1 against Uruguay. And I look over, I glance over to the side of the pitch, and I see the reserve goalkeeper warming up. So I had to double take, and then it started rushing through my head, trying to concentrate on the game and thinking, right, can't concede now because otherwise we're out. And the realization sort of was starting to sink in that the manager was going to make the change. He was going to take me off for the penalty shootout. Unfortunately for me, Brett Emerton got injured. Oh, he actually got cramps, and he had to get taken off, and that was our final substitution. So that was it. I was on the pitch and I was staying on. So from that point onwards, I never thought I was guaranteed. And I always thought the manager was just waiting for an opportunity to replace me.
He didn't like you?
I don't think it was a personal thing. I think it was more about, I don't think he rated me that highly as a goalkeeper. And I think also the reasons I've heard since then was that he believed that the other goalkeeper had, because he's had half Croatian, his Croatian background, but grew up in Australia, born in Australia, probably had a little bit more of an edge when it came to playing against Croatia at the World Cup. And I thought it was, I get that side of the argument. My problem was he played about 5 games all season in league football, and he played, I think, 3 out of the 5 warm-ups before we played the World Cup. I only played 1. I played against the Netherlands, actually, in Rotterdam, which we drew 1-1, and I played well on the day. And I just thought it was really strange. And every time he played in the warm-up games, he actually made mistakes in all of the warm-up games. And then he puts him into what was at the time our biggest game in a World Cup, and he makes a monumental mistake. What are you doing on the side of the pitch? I'm sitting there and I'm at the opposite end for the manager. I know, and I'm saying to myself beforehand, do not react to anything because the cameras are going to be on you straight away. So I'm just saying to myself, just be neutral. Don't do anything. Obviously, if we score, we celebrate, but nothing else. And that's what I did.
I just have to say, right, 2010 World Cup, Rob Green makes a mistake. We had David James here, and he's coming back again. And he was saying, I think it was Joe Hart on the bench. JMO just said, don't react. Do not do anything. Because when in England goalkeeper, that position, it's always under scrutiny. So I think it's very much relatable there. And who was the coach at the time?
Gus Hiddink. Yeah. So, but it was all the way through. I always felt that he had his real favourites. There were about 5 or 6 players in the squad that he absolutely loved and could do anything. They could do no wrong effectively. And then the rest he played with people's minds. He messed with people a lot. And that was the hard thing for us. In hindsight, I mean, I've seen him subsequently, and he actually said to me, he was joking afterwards and said it to me, this is actually only a couple of years ago, and he said to me, I've only made a few mistakes in my career as a manager, and he goes, one of them was replacing you for that game against Croatia. And this is like, we're talking, what was it, 13, 14 years later? So, look, fair play to him, and I said, I don't know I can't remember what I said anymore. I thought it was quite awkward. I didn't know what to say.
Have you dealt with a situation like this, Philip, in the middle of a tournament that's as big as the World Cup, either being dropped or watching a teammate drop that you probably disagreed with that decision, seeing coaching decisions that made you go like, hang on a minute, what's going on here?
Well, of course, in some games, you have always a lot of competition. If you play in a national team of the Netherlands, you know you have to perform really good as a team, but also in your role within the team. Yeah, and sometimes a coach can make a different decision. Look, a player wants to play every game, especially when you play in the World Cup. But sometimes he needs different quality in the pitch or different style of a player, and it can be hard on you. But you know, all the cameras will be faced on you, especially if it's a big player. Cameras on the bench, reaction, what is he laughing or not, or so. Just be a professional, be part of the team. Something you wish that another player would do the same. If you would play, he would support the team and wait for his opportunity. It's easier said than done. That's why in some tournaments, the dynamic in a team can be worse than another tournament, because a few can't accept their position. And to achieve a maximum result, you need everybody in the same direction. And sometimes you have to put your ego aside. But it can be, of course, individually can be tough on you.
But what about cliques? I mean, when you look at the Netherlands, I think you can see there would be a potential for cliques forming within. There was that stage where so many of the Barcelona players were Dutch, and then you have the Ajax players, or Feyenoord, or PSV, whatever it might be. Probably less so for Australia, because
we don't have it.
Yeah.
No, we don't. We don't actually. When we get together, it's like, it's just because we're so far apart, and even if we're still playing in the same leagues and different teams, and there is a bit of rivalry between some of the teams, there's not that same thing. No.
Because I can imagine that being the opposite within the Dutch national team, and probably a huge task for a manager is to ensure that the cliques don't form.
Yeah, I didn't experience that in the national team.
Never.
It's yeah, once, and that, but wasn't the World Cup. So it was in 1996, was a Euro Cup in the UK. Actually, my first tournament, so I was new and just watched what happened and tried to get minutes or in the team. But there was like an issue amongst the Ajax players. So we had like, I don't know, in a group of 23, 25, probably 7 or maybe 8 players from Ajax, and it was not really working out well. I don't know exactly the details, and of course that has influence on your entire team. So everybody, it wasn't really a successful tournament, and then we had to prepare for the '98 World Cup, when Hiddink was the coach. So everybody had to sit together after the tournament to make sure that how do we go into the qualification of the World Cup and into the World Cup if we play it. And since then, I didn't notice the difference if you're an Ajax player or Barcelona player or PSV player. If you play for the national team, you play for the national, you're proud, you're representing your country. And so that was the only time I think there was an issue inside the national team.
I should add that they were champions of Europe just a year before that as well, so I'm sure that maybe ego-driven partially as well to be so many members of the Ajax side.
It was a big group, of course,
Yeah.
inside the national team, and but yeah, we showed later that we could play as a unified national team and put on great performances.
You know, a couple of days ago, I was listening to a podcast where someone mentioned heading into the World Cup at the end of this year. It's very strange because this seems to be the one World Cup where more than ever, everybody seems to recognize every team. There seems to, with data available on almost every player playing at the World Cup, video analysis available, media articles, so much of content being generated on every team. You know every team, you know every player, you know every style of football that these teams are going to be playing. And I'm curious to know, how did you guys back in the days heading into a World Cup when you're facing a team from South America or Asia or Africa that, players that you've not necessarily met before, how do you even plan to deal with, the tactics on the pitch, the characters that you come up against, and the styles of football that you find it very difficult to anticipate?
I think from what I remember is that, we each time at a World Cup or leading up to World Cups, the coaching staff had a whole lot of scouts, and it was literally people being there in person, doing reviews, doing scouting reports on the opposition. That was the only way, really. They used people just in various parts of the world, if not sending their own people to go in there, basically undercover almost, to go and just scout on the other team, observe what they were doing. I know of even times where they tried to even sneak up and watch training. A lot. Yeah. And that was very common. I mean, this whole thing, remember Bielsa with Derby County and all this sort of stuff, that was normal. And that's why probably that Bielsa said it himself. I think he said it was, it's where I come from, it's normal. And that's pretty much what you do.
Now you have all the data available, but back then you have to try to collect as much information as you could get. So for every game, and especially during the tournament, there were the scouts went out to analyze the opponents, came back sometimes with some clips or some parts of the game you could watch. But I can remember in '98 when we played Argentina, the 2-1 last-minute goal of Bergkamp. It was a big game coming up, and I remember Hiddink said, "Okay, we have the lunch set. It's 1 o'clock. Let's say 1 o'clock. 10 to 1 is the meeting." So we are 10 to 1 is the meeting.
It's a 3-hour meeting.
This is a big. This is a big game. We need, but in 10 minutes it was done.
10 minutes. That's
He just gave some pinpoints for the game. Some confidence to the team. It's a tactical meeting. Just before the game, of course, again he will talk. But sometimes you plan an hour, but he felt he didn't really have to do a lot. We of course saw images of Argentina. We knew the players. Yeah, we won the game. So as a coach or a manager, sometimes you need a lot of time, a lot of input for the players. Sometimes you do something different and it can work out as well.
That's what Gus Hiddink said to us. When he came to Australia, he said to us that our very first meeting was like, look, I don't have a meeting longer than, say, 13, 14 minutes max. And the reason was, he said, firstly, generally speaking, people's attention span is up until about a 10, 12 minute point, and then after that you lose people and it just goes in one ear out the other. So he said, I will just do lots of short ones at various times, and it was exactly the same with us.
He sounds like a TikToker or something, making short content.
He would have been perfect for the TikTok generation.
TikTok he is a dream for that. But that's a really good point, because, and I've said this on the show before, I've done some conferences with Cartoon Network and other content creators.
Yeah, they're a bit young now, aren't they? Cartoon Network, I mean, what, they're 8 years old or something like that, 10 years old?
You've got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, well, I understand. But you're talking about attention span, right?
Yes.
You're not going to get much more than 2 minutes, right?
Yeah,
No.
not even 10, I think.
But they were saying, like, the world we live in now, right? When we were all growing up, cartoons were about 25 minutes. But people's attention spans have gotten even shorter now. And that's why Cartoon Network make 10-minute cartoons. No longer 23-minute, just because our brains can't process. So you can imagine a Hiddink talk now probably be like 5 minutes as opposed to 13.
Yeah, you tend to, because as a manager, you're thinking about all the details and what can happen or maybe will happen, or a lot of scenarios. But to give all that information to the players, a few players you can give a little bit more input, you will know. But there are also quite a few, if you give too much information, they get confused and they get lost. So better you divide it, some meetings maybe with the defense and with the midfielders, and one meeting with the whole team, 15 minutes, 20 max, just to really get your message across. And yeah, maybe nowadays even you have to keep it shorter.
How long were your talks?
I think 15, 20 minutes. But I on game day, but also the day before the game, so one meeting should be the opponent. Game day, you talk about your lineup and your own tactics, so individual clips sometimes, if we had enough days before the game, defense, midfield, strikers, but also not only to give information, but also to connect with the strikers and the midfielders together. Because also now, back in the day, we spoke a lot in the pitch, on the training. I think the younger generation, they speak less. So you have to come up with things to make sure they connect, to ask questions, how they want to play, how they want to receive the ball, etc. So you try to make up things to create it. And I divide it in over more days, but just a shorter span.
With Jose Mourinho, we would have probably 4 meetings before a game.
4?
Yeah. So you'd have like, the final meeting would be obviously the starting 11, and then defensive set plays. So how that starting 11 would set up for the defensive, and then a offensive set plays. And that'll be like literally 10 minutes. Each meeting would be no longer than 10 minutes. And then you do one on the opposition. You do their defensive stuff, their attacking options. And then each time you'd have just short, and then after that, you do even a review of your own game. So you do 10 minutes. It'd be just, everything was 10 minutes. And we do multiple meetings each week. And then the goalkeeping coach thought that was a good idea. So he did a goalkeeping coach one as well. So we ended up going like 5-6 meetings before a game. It was like ridiculous.
Even like in between matches, if it's a midweek game and then a weekend match?
Sometimes he'd cut it down a little bit.
Okay.
Sometimes he would go, okay, we're playing so many games so quick succession. He would just break it down and go, okay, right, we're going to just do this. You know, the set plays are standard, bang, bang, and it'd literally go through and go, right, there it is, bang, 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 bang. And it was like really quick. And then he'd go on to the opposition, because obviously each time is a different opposition. Just a reminder, a refresh, if you play against them quite regularly, just of how they set up and how you need to set up against them.
I remember watching, I think right after France won the World Cup, there was this documentary that came on. I can't remember whether it was on Netflix or Amazon Prime. It was a journey throughout their World Cup.
I thought you meant the '98 World Cup.
That's what I thought.
No.
I thought that was interesting. That was
No,
Blockbusters, wasn't it?
VCR days. It was after 2018. I think one of the things that I was very fascinated about was how Didier Deschamps wasn't the kind of guy that spoke a lot or in a very extravagant, motivational way. And what was fascinating is different players carried the burden of motivating the dressing room before the game. There was a clip of Pogba doing it, I think, before the World Cup final, and certain other characters were doing it in certain other games. And that got me really fascinated. And what was it like for you guys at a major tournament? Like, you're there in a camp for a month, you're going through the motions day in, day out. There's a lot of games. Who is carrying the burden of motivating everyone, keeping everyone on their feet? Is it the coach? Is it different characters? What was it like for you guys?
Yeah, depended a bit who was the coach and how was the setup within the squad. I think you need both. You need some players inside the team who motivate or keep the feet down for everybody. If you have 2 wins in a row in a tournament, it's still nothing. And yeah, you also need a coach in the right moment to step up and motivate. In 2010, I recall I was one of the assistant coaches, and of course we had to prepare some meetings and training. But the balance within that team in motivating, or we just qualified for the semi-final, the players came in, and a few players, Snyder, like, oh, no drinks, no party. We are here to become world champion. So guys, play a game of cards or a board game, and we go on. So to keep the focus, so they recognize you're at an important stage at the tournament that if you're too satisfied, if you think, oh, we reached semi-final, 2% can make the difference if you become the World Cup or not. And Van Marwijk was a coach who was really good, because you have a lot of meetings and many games, the more you play. But every time he took out a different subject, could be a play of the opponent, or he showed a clip of the young game, which a great moment to motivate the team. Sometimes only words, but it's a quality to every time pick the right words to motivate the squad. and you need some players who know, okay, we came for one thing here, we have to make the next step. So to keep everybody winning in the team, hey, keep going, guys. So that was 2010 was a good example.
If you had to pick one teammate of yours, and bearing in mind you're also a former captain of Barcelona and the national team, to motivate a team, who would it be? Which player would you pick?
I think there are a few players who could really motivate the team in different ways. Edgar Davids, for example, with his, maybe not with so many words, but more in his attitude, how he approached training and how he trained. He showed the team, whatever happens, will be there.
The pit bull, yeah.
Yeah, the pit bull. But you're also players who are more vocal. Frank de Boer was a leader of the national team for Quarter van der Sar. Different style of yeah, it's more a leadership group almost within the team. And Van Nistelrooy, he could be really emotional. So he was always focused on himself in preparation of the game, but something happened or during training on the game, he was yeah, everybody was like, whoa. Van Nistelrooy was talking, let's sit down, and so that interaction within the team is really important, I believe.
And what about the Australian national team? Because Australians have a reputation for being tough as nails, not caring about anything. They have snakes coming at them, they'll just catch it and throw it back out.
Yeah, and I just want to make this point. It is astonishing just how good Australia is across all different sports.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous at every Olympics, Commonwealth Games. It's all across the board, and it's the ability to just communicate so effectively. I'm pretty sure that plays a fundamental part as well.
Mark, you even look like Ian Thorpe from here, a little bit. Anyway, sorry.
I can't swim as well as him, that's for sure. Yeah, look, it's part of the culture as well. Growing up in Australia, it's first and foremost, you come out and it's not about what school you're going to, it's what sport you're going to play. You know, what education you're going to have. No, what sort of sport, which team are you playing for? And it's, you know, there's so many opportunities to make sport as your number one, actually your job as well, to make a career out of it. I think the lifestyle, the weather, all plays its part. With the national team, it was interesting, you know, we talked earlier on again about Gus Hiddink and 2006 World Cup. There was no one within the change room. Our captain was Mark Viduka at the time. So it was an interesting selection by Gus Hiddink, because Mark was someone, again, who didn't say a lot. National team people probably could argue and go, look, he certainly wasn't as prolific with the national team as he was club football. At that World Cup in 2006, didn't score a goal, but his contribution to the team was huge in terms of his movement, he's holding the ball up.
2018, same thing.
Exactly, yeah, with us not winning the World Cup, of course.
Yes.
But, you know, also I think within that group, even though we had a lot of experienced players, there was a sense of almost like players afraid to say much, because Hiddink was such an overpowering character and he was an authoritarian amongst the vast majority of the squad. So a lot of people didn't know where they stood, were afraid then to say something necessarily, and everyone was just focused on doing their own job. And Hiddink was the one that did most of the motivation and getting people ready for it. And of course he had a couple of assistants who did the same. After that we had Pim Verbeek. So two Dutchmen, but very, very different in characters, very different people. Pim was someone who was certainly a lot more approachable, someone that wanted players more involvement. He would talk to you often about the group and about how things are going and everything else. And he was very much in favour of players having an involvement. So Lucas Neal was the captain, he was very vocal, but we had other very experienced players within the group, like myself, Craig Moore, Harry Kuehl, you know, Tim Cahill. So everybody contributed to a degree. You know, everybody played a part in motivation and saying stuff to players and trying to help players along the way.
I need to know, when it comes to preparing for a match, this is applicable to club or World Cup, and you're going up against somebody that you know well, particularly if it's say a teammate at club level or someone who you used to play with. Let's say 98 World Cup, you had played with Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo. Would you pull aside
the original Ronaldo,
the original
right?
Ronaldo?
Let's get it right.
Original.
Not just Brazilian Ronaldo, it's the original.
The original, the OG, as the youngsters like to say.
The proper GOAT.
The proper GOAT. Would you pull aside the defenders or the goalkeeper just to say, look, this is what Ronaldo likes to do, this is his weakness, like, doesn't like to be turned this way? Did you try that? Did you
Yeah.
Try to analyse that game and pass it to your own players?
Yes, of course. Yeah. It happened quite a few occasions, because if you play in a national team and you play Portugal and like you said, Figo is playing or Ronaldo is playing for Brazil, probably he will face somebody he doesn't play a lot against him. So to give him, not a lot, but of course you talk about situation or sometimes a weakness or a strength.
You know what they don't like, right? At
Yeah.
training, you know how to get under their skin.
Yeah. So like a defender try to provoke or upset him or give him a few tips in maybe it can help. Like I said, in detail, in top level, it's key in any game. Like 1% can make a difference if you win the Champions League or not. So by helping your teammates, that's also a team performance, and and that's why that's not only the team meeting. Sometimes you just have a coffee and then after the lunch and you talk about different players coming up in the next game. So and that can be very helpful. Yeah.
And what was Ronaldo's weakness?
I cannot find it.
That's what I need to know, yeah.
Wasn't it PlayStation?
Yes, it was a PlayStation.
it was.
Yeah.
May have been PlayStation, I think.
And David James, apparently.
Yes, apparently so as well.
There was something that you just mentioned. The details make a very big difference in these games. You think about the World Cup. It's a massive stage. It's a lot of one-off games, and most players, I mean, probably not in the case of you guys, but most players go to the World Cup not even knowing if they were going to play in any other World Cups after that, right? So this could be the one moment for them. Were there instances where, players made certain decisions on the pitch that probably went against what was instructed by the coach in the moment, and it worked in the favor of the team? Do you guys remember that?
They're thinking. They're thinking, I can see.
Oh gosh.
Not that I can recall now. Yeah, it's such a huge stage you're playing at. To do something different or unexpected, or the coaching staff is also so big. It's not only the head coach, like 3 or 4 assistant coaches, the video coach. And so I can't give an example. No.
I mean, I'm under Henning, you wouldn't dare.
No, of course.
And that squad of players, even though like I was 32, I think it was, 34. Sorry, I was 34 at the World Cup. So no, you just wouldn't dare. And then under Pim Verbeek, what we didn't do, we didn't follow instructions in the first game and got beaten by Germany 4-0, 2-0 down, and then made substitutions. And one of the subs got sent off. Tim Cahill came on and got sent off, and instead of sitting back and just trying to weather out the storm and finish the game and say lose 2-0, we tried to get back in the game and then got getting beaten 4-0.
Well, let's say you're not a starter, and in the second game of the World Cup, like 15 minutes, you come in. Many more games, if you do well, are coming up. So if you start doing stuff you shouldn't do, then you probably know, next game, you're 23 players, I probably won't play. If I do well, maybe next game I start. So I don't think a lot of players, well, probably there are examples, but because not everybody is the same, but it's with the Netherlands was unlikely.
You also, the pressure is so big at a World Cup. It's like Philip was saying, if it's the second game, even the first game is, they're all equally as important, because like the first game is like you get off to a good start, then you set yourself really up. If you lose the first game, you're chasing, and then the second game becomes crucial. I think everyone's so focused on how big it is, the pressure, and then you have to do your job, and you're not trying to think outside the box. If you're doing something, not following instructions, it's not necessarily because you've meant to, it's just something that's happened and by accident almost, I think. I don't think there's many, I mean, we certainly didn't have it in my team.
Okay, this is more of a human question. Away from the football pitch, when you're at the hotel, the camp, the training ground, whatever you want to call it, what is the most important thing that the players need to have just to unwind, to relax? Because for me, if I was a player, I would say I need a PlayStation there. But for you, well, you're giving me that smile again, Mark. He keeps giving me this smile. You're quite a big guy. I can always see you from the corner of my eye. So what's yours, Mark?
Certainly not PlayStation. No, no. I mean, you know, I think anyone playing in front of a monitor screen, it's draining.
Okay. So no
for
monitors.
Us, no. For us, I think in 2010 there may have been, but they weren't really used. They were there, but it was mostly like pool table.
Pool table is a must.
Yeah, pool table, table tennis.
Table tennis,
Yeah, table football. That not much else. Cards.
Cards, deck of cards,
Yeah.
definite. Some board games.
Yeah. That's about it, really. Everyone else had their own movies anyway if they wanted to watch movies. It's not that you sit in a room and everyone watches a movie together. It's not
Like prison or something.
Yeah, exactly. You're not eating popcorn watching movies together under a blanket.
You would take up most of the blanket, let's be honest. Even your size.
Yeah, no, sometimes. But yeah, no, it's more about, it was more encouraged so that you would play something with your teammates and something that more of you could play. And it was just about building camaraderie and having a bit of a relaxing moment, switching off without being draining and too draining. Sometimes the games of table tennis can get pretty serious.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Competitive.
Yeah.
And you're like, hang on, whoa, guys, come on, like, relax. You know, I've got a game in a couple of days' time, you got training tomorrow, relax a little bit.
Yeah, we always made sure that in the hotel there was a certain area for players. If you would want to play PlayStation, there was like a big sofa, there was a table tennis, or like a place that not everybody would stay in their room, play the PlayStation by themselves, but to go out to that room to spend time together, playing cards, playing table tennis, playing whatever, pool. So that was something in the national team of the Netherlands. Everywhere we went for a longer period of time, let's say camping before the World Cup or Euro Cup or during, we created a common area where everybody would feel comfortable to go. Yeah.
The other thing we always had, didn't matter where we were, what it was, international break, every game we had a coffee machine. I'm telling you, we had a coffee machine, as in either like a good one as well. So like it was, when I say good one, it could be just the pod ones, like Nespresso ones. Had to always have a coffee machine with us.
I thought Mark was going to say marmalade.
Well, I think the coffee machine wasn't for the team. I think it was just for Mark, given how much coffee he drinks.
Possibly it was also for me, and I was very vocal in making sure there was a coffee machine everywhere. Yeah. But there were a number of us. There were a lot of us actually that had to have a good coffee machine.
Coffee is important, yeah. And a cook.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you don't travel anywhere without a cook. Yeah.
As you do, of course.
How much of football do you guys watch during the tournament? Because on one hand, I'm assuming, you know, as football players, a part of that is also being fans, and you guys would want to watch some of those games, maybe for enjoyment purposes, maybe some of the times to see some of these players that you might come up against in later rounds of the tournament. But also sometimes it's like you don't want to consume too much of it because you want to like be fully rested and keep your mind away from football. So what was that like for you guys?
I think in many occasions went to the lobby or to the common area where there was a big screen with a coffee or with the guys and you watch the game. Of course, you see details of a player, but also just to enjoy watching the game. Yeah, quite a lot of, because you spend so many hours in the hotel. It's nice to see some football and watch it together.
Yeah, we watch as much as we could, and be very much that. You'd watch some of the opponents. You'd just enjoy the tournament. You're there at the World Cup. You actually could switch off a little bit, not think about your game so much. You're just watching the other teams. You're watching the tournament and then going, actually, we're part of this tournament as well. So that's why the coffee machine was so important.
True.
And we didn't go under a blanket either, just in case you're thinking.
Have to double check these things. South Africa could be a bit cold at times. All right, I need to know. Champions within the camps. So when it comes to table tennis in the Dutch camp, if you had to pick one name as the best table tennis player, who would it be?
Van Persie.
Van Persie. Straight away. You don't even have to think about that.
There was no flinching.
I'm writing this down. RVP. What about in cards? Who is the card shark? If you had to pick someone to play backjack for the Netherlands, who would it be?
The Boer twins, Frank and Ronald.
That's because they got telepathy. I'm telling you.
They're playing with us. Yeah.
Okay.
No, they were really, the masters of the card game.
And pool?
I don't know.
Are you waiting for me to say, was it you?
No, definitely not me. No, because I like to play board games, card games, but didn't play a lot of pool. Table tennis I did.
Okay.
But sometimes, somebody else is just a little bit better. So that pool, I don't know. No.
In the Australian camp, table tennis.
If I can remember correctly, I think Harry Kuehl was.
Harry Kuehl?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was certainly one of the better players.
Who was the card shark?
There was a few. Yeah, there was a few. Craig Moore was pretty good at it. Lucas Neal. Luke Wilkshire was very good at it. 3 names there. And Poole? Poole. That's a good question. No, I can't tell you, Paul. Don't really know. I would have thought that someone like Mark would have an unfair advantage because your reach is so long. Yeah.
You know, it's...
Maybe.
I like
in a swimming pool.
In the swimming pool, that's why he looks like Ian Thorpe.
I like,
exactly.
Exactly. I like to sit back and watch. Just like to watch most of the time. I didn't really play that much. I played a bit of table tennis, but I didn't play. I played a bit of pool too. But there's always a pool shark.
Yeah.
So there's always someone that just blitzes everyone, and it's just like, oh, I don't really want to play against you. I think Luke Wilkshire was pretty good at pool as well.
He's a good all-rounder.
Yeah, yeah. He's a bit of a shark.
Okay. I'll remember this if he comes here.
Yeah, he's a bit of a shark.
Okay, do not play pool.
With Luke Wilkshire.
Yeah.
Or cards, apparently.
Or cards,
or
apparently.
the Boer twins.
Yeah.
Either one of them.
Out of all the World Cup squads that you guys have been with, either as player or even as manager in your case, Philip, what was the one squad that had the best camaraderie?
Yeah, camaraderie. Yeah, that's. I think 2010.
More than the ones that you
In
participated as a
'98,
player.
I think it's a close call. I think if we would have in '98 a little bit more of the mentality I just explained with Snyder, with Kuit, Robin, to be really the only thing that mattered was become world champion. That belief was so big, and every day they spoke about it and pushed each other. So we believed in '98 we were good, but if we would have had a little bit more of that mentality, maybe we would have won the game against Brazil. So that's why I pick 2010.
I'd have to say 2006 because we were, like, most of us had grown up together. We were part of a lot of failed qualifications, and then 2005 when we qualified, and that group of guys, yeah, I'd have to say that 2006 group. When you leave a tournament, when you exit a tournament, can you bring yourself to watch the following games, the subsequent games, or do you just want nothing to do with football for a week? Well, they didn't have anything to watch after 2010. Well, 2010, that was it, right? 2010 was a different story, of course. But as a player, when you at the previous World Cups?
'98, we played third, fourth place against Croatia.
Did you care about that?
No, that's why we lost, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, the demotivation. Of course, you play the game to win, but something broke, so our big goal was gone.
Did you watch the final?
Yeah, I think we did. In 2006, no, when we went out against Portugal, crazy game with 25 yellow cards, 4 red cards. Was my last international game. I was done. I didn't see any more games.
Zidane headbutted at the red scene.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, Italy won that one.
Yeah, Italy won.
Yeah.
Could you bring yourself to watch matches? Like, how quickly would it take to?
I mean, I was travelling as well, but like after the tournament, because you kind of like, obviously we never went as far as the Netherlands did, unfortunately. We went, obviously in Germany, we got knocked out of the second round. The biggest disappointment for us was we played Italy, right? And obviously Italy went on to win the World Cup in 2006. But Italy were a slow burner, so they started slowly. And even against us, they didn't play particularly well. And then Materazzi got sent off midway through the second half. So we had all the possession, all the dominance, but not really testing Buffon in there and having really big chances. And then they scored, like, literally last kick of the game, they got a penalty. So the bitterness of that, because of the fact that I don't think we'll ever get an opportunity to beat a team as good as Italy ever again in a World Cup, or certainly not in a long time, because they were there to be beaten. Everything was in our favour and we didn't take advantage of it. You had Ukraine next round, Italy beat them 3-0. you kind of go, right, you know, there were so many ifs and buts. They're those little fine margins,
Details.
the little details that you missed out on. You know, the game against Italy, Gus Hiddink was sure that we're going to extra time, so he held back one of the substitutions that maybe could have done a difference had he come on. There was all these little things, but look, it didn't stop me watching any of the games. I watched the rest of them, yeah, because look, ultimately as well, we know where we are with Australia. We know, you know, we're not necessarily going to win the World Cup, obviously, but we're going to. I think it was more about, you're a football fan, and I love the World Cup, so I watched all the games afterwards, yeah.
See, you can never write a team off, though.
You can't.
There was a team called Leicester that won the Premier League.
Yeah, but it's not the World Cup, is it?
No, it isn't. It
Yeah,
isn't the World Cup.
and like I said, it was a sliding door moment. There's little tiny little details against Italy that, had we have beaten them, you just never know where we would have gone.
I've just got this one question for Mark specifically. One of the things that when I speak to colleagues, journalists from Australia, obviously one of the things that there's a lot of frustration about this within the football community is that it's almost treated like a stepson sport of Australia, because obviously a lot of focus goes towards the Aussie footy over there.
Yep.
So when you guys go to the World Cup, internally, is there sort of like this eagerness to sort of prove the entirety of the footy community that this is a sport and this is a team that needs to be taken seriously as well?
The whole Australian community knows how big the World Cup is, because all the other codes even have a massive interest when Australia go to the World Cup. It's not the other code's fault. You know, it's our own fault. The organisation, the way that our code's been run in the country for so long. Of course, we've got lots of mountains to climb, because you're fighting against big organisations, you're fighting against media moguls who control all that, but also have a vested interest in AFL and rugby league. So that's your challenge as well. But we don't do ourselves any favours. We are where we are because it's mostly down to our own fault in terms of the organisation and the way it's been run over, I'm talking generations, and that's the frustrating bit, because the game is, we all know how big the game is. It's enormous in Australia. Look, any country that, you guys know the same thing. You probably have the same frustration with Malaysia, for example. Liverpool come here, you sell at every stadium. You know, we have the same thing. Liverpool came to Australia, MCG, 95,000 people. It's sold out in under an hour. They could have probably had 3 games there. It's a world record attendance for a Liverpool game. So the interest is there. People are there. People want it, but we don't satisfy the appetite.
To fill up on that point a bit more, even the Prime Minister had to come in and issue a statement because there were some issues broadcasting the World Cup.
Yep.
Not too long ago. I think that a Prime Minister had to say something.
Yeah, because it was an outrage that obviously the broadcasting failed at that time. It was obviously going into streaming, digital, it was all new. And unfortunately, it didn't quite work out for a game or two. But after that, it was brilliant. And the coverage now is unbelievable. So, yeah, that's how big the game is. That's how big the game is in Australia. And I know lots of people from different codes who love football. They played all the other codes, but they love football. So, like I said to you, it's not that you're fighting against all of them necessarily. It's we fight against ourselves. That's the other problem. We have internal fighting within states across the country, and we implode on ourselves. That's the problem. We're not united. We haven't been united forever.
Yeah. Final couple of questions before we wrap things up. I've always wondered about this because growing up, I used to read Match Magazine, Shoot Magazine, all the football stuff, right? And it looks like every footballer in a team are best mates and all you do is hang out together, all 25 players in a squad. But I've come to learn life isn't like that. There are going to be players you don't get on with. And I'm sure that's also applicable to the national team. But have you ever come across a player and maybe you had to have a word with them because they're being a little bit of a This is a podcast, so we can say whatever we want in terms of language.
Well, of course you will face teammates you don't have a click with, or they annoy you a little bit.
Or arrogant, even.
Yeah, that's
just
sometimes. It's not your blood type. No, I don't think I...
Even as a captain, this can also be done at club level at Barcelona.
Well, I had some conversations with players when, for example, they act in a certain way what could affect the team. But on a personal level, if I wouldn't have a click with somebody, okay, I'd just make sure that on a professional level, if you train, you play, you need each other in the game, it's no problem. But I don't have to spend too much time when we're not on a professional level. So avoid is maybe a little bit too much, but yeah, you just spend the time with guys you like.
Yeah.
And that's in all the teams I've faced. Some, okay, the click within the whole team is better than other teams or other years. That's the difference. But if somebody will affect the team spirit or performances by negative behavior, expressions in the media, bad behavior on training, yeah, well, I had a few conversations, yeah. As a player, of course, as a manager as well, but when I'm playing in that team, and sometimes you have to learn a lesson to, can be a young guy, does funny stuff in training, or and then the older guys are there to give him or a blow on the pitch to make sure that he stepped over the line. I think that's a very important part of football, yeah, and on a team dynamic.
Even at club level, it doesn't have
Yeah,
to be
look,
World Cup.
I mean, there's been moments in club level as well. Of course, we have words with people. I mean, probably my last one I had was Jimmy Bullard when he was at Fulham. Played a game, we came off at half time, we were 2-0 down, and both times his runner from midfield, he let go. He basically almost stopped running. We came in and they scored, and came in at half time, and Roy's coming in just like Jimmy. He's not even yelling and shouting because Jimmy was one of those people that he kind of barked quite loudly, so people treaded a bit lightly with him, right? And then Roy said to him, "Look, Jimmy, it was your man," and he was like, "No, it wasn't my man. You can go get lost." In other words, "It's not my man." He goes, "Well, we can show you the video." He goes, "I don't care. It's not my man." And Ray Lewington walked in. He said, "Ray, tell him." He said, "Jimmy, it was your man." And Jimmy went, "No, you can F off, basically. I'm not taking that." So he stormed off, ripped all the set plays off the wall, and stormed off into the bathroom. And I thought the manager's going to take him off, has to take him off. He didn't take him off. Anyway, I said to him, mate, I think it's outrageous how you've spoken to the manager and how you behave, disrespectful of the team, disrespectful of the players. I think you should apologise. And he's like, no, you can go. It was basically like coming together, and I just said to him, I think you're out of order. So he wasn't there much longer. They sold him.
Yeah.
Because it becomes a bit of a problem within the change room, right? Because you see someone speaking to the manager and disrespecting the players, and in the end it's a bit like, well, hang on a second, no, I can't go on. That's got to be sorted out. So and the manager realised also a lot of players were against him in terms of his behaviour, not against him personally. What became personal, because it's all about the good of the game, but the good of the group. And you know that if there's one in the group that is spoiling the cart, then you need to act upon it.
All right, so writing you off Soccer Saturday with Jimmy Bullard.
But if you make a mistake, well, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
If you apologise to the team or the manager, or it's fine, it happens. It's an important part that nobody's perfect. But if you don't do it,
yeah,
be careful.
But goalkeepers are good at deflecting, not just shots.
Yeah, but they don't catch it anymore. That's the problem. See, if they caught it, it'd be fine.
Yes, true. Okay, hypothetical one just for you, Mark. Okay. Who would you rather track back a player, Berbatov or Bullard? Because Berbatov, I'm a Spurs supporter, so I used to watch him a lot.
I love the
Who would I
look on Mark's
rather?
face.
Yeah.
Neither, because neither of them would do it. It's like, what's the point? Like, they wouldn't even do it. There's no point even picking one of them because, yeah, they just two-finger you. Yeah, no chance.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
Just one.
That's not my job.
Yeah.
Pass me the ball. Just be quiet. Keep calm. Pass me the ball. That's what probably
That's what
Berbatov would say.
on his shirt.
That's what Berbatov. Well, he wouldn't even say it. He put it on his shirt, and Jimmy would just tell you to F off.
As you do. Let's see, what's the time? I think we have to finish things off because we are live in about 45 minutes for the Premier League. Any last words?
No, last words. I think it's been an absolute pleasure having the both of you on this podcast. I've been meaning to have this World Cup conversation for a very long time, and I think it's satisfied a lot of curiosity that was developed even as a young kid way back then. So thank you, gentlemen, for that.
Pleasure.
And thank you, of course, for watching. Find us on Instagram as per usual, Stadium Astro, on Twitter, on all the usual social media platforms. We'll be back soon with a brand new episode. Goodbye for now.